Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. Welcome today to my full review of the Pablo Profundo Neo Retro Dive Watch from GNOMON Watches out of Singapore. But before I go on, first of all, a big thank you today to subscriber Dave. Dave got sick of seeing me in my Boston Red Sox t-shirt, so he sent me an LA Dodgers one and several others. Thank you very much, Dave, for your generosity. If you'd like to see me spruik your local team, please get in touch, send me an email, send me a t-shirt. T-shirts have been part of this whole thing from the beginning, and I would love to wear one of yours on the channel. Okay, on to the watch. Now this one is right up my street today. I'm a big fan of the neo retro, neo vintage thing, and this Pablo Profundo ticks a lot of boxes. Imagine a vintage Rolex and a vintage Tudor getting jiggy with it. The Profundo would pretty much be the result. Faux patina on the hands and indices, a proper rivet bracelet, big crown, and a number of other styling cues that are straight out of the 1960s and 1970s. ETA 2824 and a decent price tag around the $500 US as well. Now this is a GNOMON exclusive. I'm sure you're familiar with GNOMON. They're a reseller of Ball, Alpina, Squale, Glycine and a whole bunch of other brands. I'll leave a link to this one in the description of the video. Obviously, they also have a couple of their own micro brands, and this Pablo Profundo is one of those. They sent me this one in for review. I do not have to send it back. So big thank you to GNOMON. The eternal question remains today though, is it any good? Let's flip the camera and find out. What? Him? Oh yeah, don't worry, we'll talk about him later. Oh yes, we will be talking about the elephant in the room, but let's give this one a fair crack of the whip before then, because it's a really nice watch. It looks good, it's well made, it's a little bit retro by numbers, but that's no bad thing I think. If you're going to go for that neo-vintage, neo-retro look, then do it properly. Put all the kind of tropes in there, and they've done that with this Pablo, and I think it looks pretty good. Mercifully small instruction manual in the form of a little plastic card there, and we have a 2-year international warranty from GNOMON. I should point out that these are limited editions. There's only 200 of these. They call it the Pablo Profundo VB-1. There are only 200 of them made, each of them individually numbered, as I'll show you on the case back. So great set of dimensions, great set of proportions on this Profundo. 40mm in diameter, bang on 13mm thick, 49.5mm lug tip to lug tip, 20mm lug width, nice taper on this proper riveted bracelet from 20 down to 16, back up to 17.5 at the clasp, and sized up for me, it hits that stainless steel sweet spot, 154 grams. So 316L stainless steel case, crown, bezel and bracelet, solid end links, riveted bracelet, I'll show you that in a second, and a proper milled clasp as well. Lovely piece of box domed sapphire here, and you can see that pop. Little bit of blue purple AR, so we've got some anti-reflective coating on the underside of this one, helping keep it all nice and legible. Again, very in keeping with that 60s, they cite 50s and 60s design. Interesting though that they have chosen to use crown guards here. I would have thought that if they were really going for a 50s, 60s, it would have been an unguarded crown, but it's a 6mm crown, nice and easy to operate, and they're semi-shrouded crown guards. Now the bezel is another real point of interest with this watch. There's a little bit of play to it here, but that's because you need to depress the bezel in order to rotate it. Even then, it is pretty stiff. It's almost impossible to rotate the bezel ordinarily. You need to squeeze down on it if you want to rotate it. If you will be using this one as a proper dive watch, that certainly gives you confidence that you can set that bezel and forget that bezel. It is not going to be adjusted by accident. The only other watch that I've encountered with that kind of push to set bezel was the GNOMON Ocean Rover. Again, another super retro 40mm dive watch. The bezel insert is aluminium. Again, ceramic wouldn't really have worked with what they were trying to do here. And there's that classic red triangle, very much like Tudors of old. The case finish is very nice. Etched 6mm crown there, as I mentioned, high polished side, radial brush to the lugs, and there is a little chamfered high polish edge there, helping you transition between the side of the case and the lugs, and drilled lugs as well. As I said, it's a bit retro by numbers. They have really ticked a lot of the boxes required: the big crown, drilled lugs, aluminium bezel, box sapphire crystal, and this riveted bracelet. Now, shame on you, Tudor and Oris, for doing mock rivets. This is a proper riveted bracelet. Bit tricky to operate though. You do need to get 2 screwdrivers, one either side, and use both at the same time, but I managed to adjust it, no problems at all. Little Pablo Profundo there, etched onto the clasp, double security pusher, and it is a proper machined scissor clasp. Zoomed right in on the dial, and it's got that Rolex meets Tudor thing happening in no uncertain terms, hasn't it? Very similar indices and dial layout, hand layout, etc. to the Rolex Submariner. That being the diamond at 12, large batons at the 3, 6 and 9, no date in this one obviously, and circular indices everywhere else. Mercedes handset, all in a kind of caramel colour. That's the colour that they cite on the GNOMON website when they're advertising these ones. Minute track all the way around the outer edge. It's a nice, clean, easy to read dial, matte black with that caramel colour on top. Mixture of painted and applied. You can see the Profundo and Pablo just painted on, as is the minute track. All the other markers are applied, but within a painted outline, if you like, a kind of stencil all the way around the outer edge of those markers. I think it works. Perhaps the caramel colour isn't going to be to everyone's taste. It has got that kind of faux patina look, but I quite like it. I think it suits the watch overall. No major complaints about the Lume on this one either. Perhaps you remember it made a cameo appearance back in Lume Wars episode 2. It lost out in the first round to the Seiko Turtle, but there's no shame there. C3 Superluminova, and plenty of it on the hour markers and the hands, and that Lume pip there. Doesn't last a massive amount of time, but it is decent enough and in keeping with the overall vintage look of the watch. The case back is, shall we say, slightly simple. I haven't seen many more brutal ways of letting you know that you've bought a limited edition watch than just thumping the number in loud and proud on the middle of the case back. But there you go, this is number 52. So screw down case back, 200 meters of water resistance screw down crown, the usual adverts here, all stainless steel sapphire crystal, and that ETA 2824-2 movement. Let's get this one on the time grapher then. So the watch isn't Swiss made, but the movement certainly is. ETA 2824, a kind of staple workhorse. Everybody uses the word workhorse. Swiss made automatic movement, 25 joules, hacking and hand winding, and as you see there, it's a 28,800 vibrations per hour, so you get that nice smooth sweep of the second hand, 8 ticks per second, roughly 40-hour power reserve, and as you can see, this one running -2 seconds per day in the default flat on its back position. Amplitude is good, beat error is perhaps a little higher than I would have liked, but a rock solid choice that will run for many, many years in the back of your Pablo. And there is the watch sitting on top of my 7-inch wrist, 40mm, a sweet spot for me, a sweet spot for many, hence the prevalence of 40mm dive watches. Nice bit of taper on here, 155 grams, it wears a treat. Now if you are a guy with a slightly smaller wrist, you're really going to appreciate that recessed mid-link of the end-link. It means that the bracelet conforms to your wrist the minute it starts to leave the case profile. It's a slim movement, the ETA 2824, so no great protrusion on the case back. The whole thing sits very nicely indeed, and it is super legible. That caramel colour against the matte black dial, really very easy to read. As you can see when we take the camera further out, still no problems at all with legibility. I am a sucker for this neo-retro look, I really am. Hence the repeated purchase of the Oris 65 and my fondness for various other watches that I've reviewed that go for this older 60s style diver look. No less legible when you get the watch outside as well. That AR coating, the little pop of blue that you saw under the studio lights, really paying dividends when you get it into the wilds. And that's it on my wrist. Not a huge amount of curvature from the case, as is the way with these Submariner style watches, but as I said, that bracelet, that recessed mid-link, really does help an awful lot here. It wears very well, does the Pablo. But Pablo, oh Pablo. Let's get on to the moans and niggles section, shall we? I think there is a lot to like here. You know, as I said, kind of retro by numbers, but it does it very well indeed. It's nicely machined, and shame on you, Oris and Tudor, for coming up with your mock rivet bracelets and charging a damn sight more. If a micro brand like this can have a proper riveted bracelet with actual proper functioning rivets, then so can you. One complaint though is that there's effectively no micro adjustment on this very small clasp. It looks like there's two holes here, but you can't actually use the inner hole because the protruding rivet stops you from putting the bracelet further into the clasp. It's an easy fix if there is a Pablo Profundo VB-2. They just need to flatten off that last little screw here so it does actually slide in and out the clasp. But as it is, it's a bit hit and miss styling. It's a little bit too loose for me. And then there's the name. Pablo, meaning Paul in Spanish. This is a watch called Paul. And Profundo means deep, so it's a Paul deep, a deep Paul. Now, I've met several nice people called Pablo. I've met a very nice dog called Pablo. There he is, a truly lovely animal. But I'm not sure I would want the word Pablo Paul on my wrist. When you purchase a micro brand watch, you're already taking a little bit of a leap away, a different direction from the mainstream watches from Seiko's, Orient's, Citizens and the like. You're suggesting to people that perhaps brand identity doesn't mean as much to you as exclusivity, as value, as specs, as looks, whatever it is that drew you to the micro brand watch in the first place. But are you throwing all brand identity out the window? Are you prepared to have the word Pablo on your wrist? I'm just not sure. I'm sure there are a lot of people watching this video who will be native Spanish speakers. What do you think about the word Pablo being on the dial here? I can't help but think that they have shot themselves in at least one, if not both feet, by choosing a name as insipid as this one. It's a real shame because there is a lot to like about this watch. I do like some of the details. I think it's well spec'd, it's well made, and it's a damn sight cheaper than an Oris 65 or a Black Bay 58, which are the obvious alternatives from the mainstream big Swiss luxury brands. But it's called Pablo, and I'm just not sure if I could do it, and I'm not sure how many of you can do it either. So there you have it, the Pablo Profundo. Like an Oris 65 perhaps, but for 40% of the cost. Or maybe it's like a Black Bay 58, but you can actually buy one for about 20% of the cost of a Black Bay. Regardless, I think it's a well put together watch. Great specs, and I do like that neo-retro look. Perhaps they've cranked it up just a little too much with the dial and hands though. But our friend the elephant, the name, Pablo. I just don't know what they were thinking with this one. Of all the names in all the world, they picked that one, and I think they've scuppered their chances of a successful watch as a consequence. But don't just take my word for it. You tell me what you think. Looking forward to hearing your comments in the section below. As always, thanks for watching. See you in the next one.